But what then is the so-called flying saucer? What does it really represent? It is the ingression of a higher dimensional epoch which reverberates through history. It is a shock wave being generated by an eschatological event at the end of time. In other words, natural laws are not universal constants. They are slowly evolving flux phenomena. For instance, the speed of light, which is taken as a universal constant, has only been measured in the last 100 years. It is entirely induction to extrapolate the principle of the stability of the speed of light to all time. Any good scientist knows that induction is a leap to faith. Science is founded on the principle of induction. That is what this theory challenges. It says that the fact that one did A and B resulted does not mean that whenever one does A, that B will be the result. This cannot be proven. Before Einstein, space was thought to be a dimension where one put things. Space was visualized as somehow analogous to emptiness. But then Einstein pointed out that space is a thing which has torque and is affected by objects. In other words, from an idea, a place where you can put things, to a thing. Space is a thing. It is affected by gravitational fields. Light passing through a gravitational field in space will be bent because the space through which it travels is bent. What we are proposing in a nutshell is that time, which was also previously thought of as a place where one put things, is also a thing. And time changes. There are different kinds of time. And as these kinds of time come and go in their cyclical progression on their many levels, situations evolve which are the responses of matter to the conditioning imparted to it by time and space. These two things condition matter. It was always matter that was thought to be real. But actually matter has a quality more nearly like thought, and matter thinks what it thinks according to two flux phenomena which are in interrelationship, the space-time continuum. This idea does have axioms. A major one is taken from Leibniz. Leibniz talked about monads, monadic space. He envisioned the monads as being like tiny particles which were infinitely reduplicated everywhere in the universe. These tiny particles contained all places within themselves. They were not here and now. They were everywhere, all the time, in each place. They were all identical, but in the way they interconnected, they built up a larger continuum. Memory is similar to this in its principle of operation. Destruction of up to 90% of the brain does not impair memory function. It is as though memory is not stored anywhere. It is as though it is like a gas and permeates the brain throughout. Like a hologram, all of the memory is in each part. One can take a holographic plate of Mount Fuji and cut it in half. When half is illuminated, the entire image is present. One can do this again and again. The holograph is made up of a nearly infinite number of tiny images, each of which, in combination with its fellows, presents one image. Quantum physics makes similar statements, saying that the electron is not somewhere, sometime. The electron is a cloud of probabilities, and that is all one can say about it. A similar quality adheres to my idea of time and the comparison of time to a thing. The obvious question to be asked of this is, what is the smallest time that a thing can be made of? The scientific approach would be to divide toward the small, to find out if it is discrete. So what one is looking for is a chronon, a particle of time. My hunch is that the chronon exists but is not distinct from the atom. The atoms are chronons. Atoms are simply far more complicated than had been suspected. There may be atoms and chronons. Chronons may not be reducible to atoms, but I suspect that what we are looking for is one particle that makes matter, space, time, and energy, but not the electron in the Heisenberg-Bohr description that describes the properties of the electron which account for physical matter. But the electron must be more complicated than that, because it exists in a universe where minds and organisms arise. So we have to describe the atomic properties that would allow a particle in certain stages to coalesce into a living organism or a thinking organism. Even a bacterium like E. coli is a staggering accomplishment for the Heisenberg-Bohr atom. The Heisenberg-Bohr model explains the physical universe. It doesn't explain organism or mind. We have to overlay that atomic model with qualities. We must imbue the atom with qualities that will let us understand how we could exist, how we could arise out of its substratum. I do not claim that we have done this, but we have stumbled upon the intellectual avenue that will have to be followed to achieve this understanding. The key lies in cyclical units, in hierarchical structures, generating various kinds of continui that move toward different kinds of closure. The person who has actually laid the firmest foundation for understanding this sort of thing philosophically is Alfred North Whitehead. Nothing we have suggested is beyond the power of his method to anticipate. Whitehead's formalism accounts for minds and organisms and a number of things poorly resolved by the Cartesian approach. Other visionary thinkers are probing these areas. General systems theory is the idea that any process can be related through a mathematical equation to all other processes, simply by virtue of all processes being part of a common class. The overthrow of a dictator, the explosion of a star, the fertilization of an ova, all should be describable through one set of terms. The most promising recent developments in this area have been the emergence of the new evolutionary paradigm of Prigogine and Jansch. With their work, nothing less has been achieved than a new ordering principle in nature. This is the discovery and mathematical description of dissipative self-organization as a creative principle underlying the dynamics of an open and multi-leveled reality. Dissipative structures work their miracle of generating and preserving order through fluctuations, fluctuations whose ground is in quantum mechanical indeterminacy. If we had a perfect philosophical mirror of the universe, I would be able, by applying our philosophical method, to tell a person how much change he had in his pocket. Since he actually has whatever amount of change he has in his pocket at that moment, it is an accomplished fact, and so should be possible to calculate. What is important is to understand the necessities of occurred existence, not the necessities of existence about to occur. Although there too boundary conditions operate, but they are boundary conditions, not absolutely determined fact. We assume that 10 minutes hence the room we are in will exist. It is a boundary condition which will define the next 10 minutes in our space-time coordinate. But we cannot know who will be in the room 10 minutes hence. That is free to be determined. One may ask if we can really know that the room will exist. This is where induction enters the picture, since in truth we cannot know with certainty. There is no absolutely rigorous way of establishing that. But we can make the inductive leap to faith that has to do with accumulated experience. We project that it will be a boundary condition. But in principle, in the next 10 minutes there could be an earthquake and this building might not be left standing.